And Ricky Lambert has joined me from the Flow News 24 desk, and we're talking about the Building Better Regions funding. Hi, Ricky. How are you?
Great, thank you.
I want to preface my comments on this by saying that when we talk about building better regions, I immediately think this is construction. I immediately think this is roads. I think this is major initiatives, projects that would generate employment and so forth in our local towns. But it's not necessarily the case with this terminology from the federal government.
Well, that's right. When we talk about building, one term that comes to mind is engineering and construction. But some of this stuff sounds more like social engineering than actual construction engineering that's happening in our regions.
Yeah, look, you go back to, say, the Gillard era, which was the building and the education revolution, and that really meant school halls, of which were not necessarily designed to play basketball on, and some were too short, and all these sorts of things happen. But with this Building Better Regions funding, there's another round that the government's made available, and I'm sure a lot of councils, it's virtually like a not-for-profit situation where organisations can come together, get government funding. In general terms, organisations then business would not necessarily be able to get the funding. Let's just say, have a look at some of the Building Better Regions in our local areas. For instance, I think a good project has been the redevelopment of Cumming Avenue in Birchip. It's nearly $500,000 from the federal government. I've actually been in and seen how they've retransformed the main street, and that is a terrific project.
Yeah, and there's some others. We've been through them on Flow News 24, a community wastewater project in the past for Orroroo. There was some $220,000 spent there, and replacing the irrigation system at the Corowa Golf Club, almost $1 million spent there. Clearly, infrastructure. Yeah,
and the other ones to maybe for some of our local listeners in Woodner and Elliston, they've just got their internet improved because they put in fibre radio telecommunications at $1.3 million, and that, I think, has been a very, very good improvement for the area. Then you sort of start to see some of the ones that I sort of went, well, that's a bit unusual. The Riverland has been given for its 2030 tourism plan. $20,000. Now, it's a small amount, and I'm not saying that the funding couldn't have come from somewhere, but is that really something right now that we're going to build into the region, a plan for 2030?
Yeah, we're talking about building, and I know the government has said that in this current funding round, $22 million will go to water infrastructure, for instance, so it's actually construction. But there was a regional skills audit for the tourism industry in Kapunda, $17,600, and there was a rock festival in Ardrossan that was funded under the most recent funding round. So they might have constructed a stage temporarily for the rock event, but I'm not sure it's a long-term funding investment.
Yeah, building a better future for that region. That's the question that one asks. Kadina, for instance, in round 4, supporting a 3-day Copper Coast Food, Art and Wine Festival. I mean, that is an event and it's wonderful, but isn't that something that, say, state government and local government would be more responsible for than the federal government's building a better region? I just, for mine, doesn't match up.
Yeah, I used to do talks in schools about politics and how there's a blurring of the lines between federal, state and local government and who's responsible for funding what. And naturally, it all comes back to votes and federal politicians wanting to get votes in their local electorate. I know in the coverage we're running on Flow News 24 about this, the Labor Party have made the suggestion there's a bit of pork barrelling that happens with this fund. I think you're absolutely right. Federal government should be funding infrastructure and big projects, and I was critical previously about a dog park in Nuriuppa, for instance, funded with federal money. That's definitely council and maybe at best state funding. It's not a federal responsibility.
Yeah, I would reckon that if you're in Peterborough, which I think would love to have a live, play, stay branding strategy, but is a local initiative like that really building into the community? I reckon things like Penrith and Lameroo having a major upgrade of their main streets, Lameroo particularly because the highway goes right through the town, making it safer so that people can cross that highway where big trucks are actually rumbling through that part of the town. I can see that as being a reasonably good initiative.
Yep, and you got the Bullock Shire roads in Sea Lakes, $923,000, the Oyen Livestock Exchange, $110,000. That's supporting infrastructure and our farmers and their economy. But this sort of approach to funding really just puts it where it suits politically the government of the day, and I think it also shows that councils are scratching for money. They can't get enough money out of their ratepayers because they have a lower population. Hopefully we're turning that around in the regions, and so they're reaching out to the federal government for money under a building program and getting funding for encouraging regional youth to volunteer in the Clare Valley.
And again, finally, Streaky Bay, they're going to develop confidence in communication and resilience for women in Cleve and Streaky Bay. Again, it's a fantastic program. There's nothing wrong with it, but is it really something that should get funding under the Building a Better Region? Now, yes, building better life and all that sort of thing, I know where that's coming from, but surely we've got departments for women and we've got departments for a whole range of other things that would come into getting funding from those departments than a Building Better Regions infrastructure fund.
I think we have to be really clear that if people are starting to get a bit antsy about what we're saying here, all of these projects have merit. All of these funding applicants have merit, but it's a Building Better Regions program. I think that what the message should be is people should be applying if they want infrastructure funded in their local area, councils and businesses as well, and put their names in. See, Labor has been critical of this funding program because the minister has ticked off on, approved a whole 100 or so projects under this program that were rejected by the assessment panel. Now, you've got to question why that's going on, and I think that you've got to be in it to win it with these things. You've heard some of the types of projects that have been approved, so why not put your name forward and see if you get it going?
Yes, recently the same federal government presided over innovation grants for media, for regional media, and strangely, capital city media and corporate media seem to be the biggest beneficiaries of the funding. Again, Sports Rorts, where we've got the former minister having her own rifle club getting the money. These are things that I think we need to highlight. Ricky, thanks for drawing it to our attention. And for those that are looking to apply, the new funding round is becoming available from the federal government. What sort of interesting project can you get up?